I have a prepared statement for tomorrow, and in that statement I talk about a much more serious act that the President committed than anything that we've generally talked about, and that was the illegal bombing of Sudan and Afghanistan. $200 million were spent for that without congressional approval. Not only is it annoying, I think it's illegal, I think it's unconstitutional, I think it's an act of war, and I think it's much worse than anything that we have considered under the impeachment. There's been a lot of talk about the Constitution in the last several weeks, in the last several months. A lot of people holding up the Constitution. But I'd like them to read the Constitution, everybody here in this Congress, to read the Constitution about committing acts of war. This, to me, is an outrage, and we shouldn't be participating in it. We should not permit our President to do this. There's no threat. We're going to do more harm by doing this.
If Congress were given an opportunity to vote on whether we should bomb Iraq, would you go along with that as long as it went through the procedures?
No, I would strongly oppose it because they're not a threat to our national security. Iraq has a third-rate army. They have no ability to wage war. Our policies are deliberately destroying the country. They can't feed their children. They're not allowed to have medication. There was a story in today's paper where one of our private charity groups was being fined because they were trying to get medicines in to the Iraqi people. So for us to unleash bombs on Iraq at this particular time to kill more innocent people for narrow political reasons, no, there is absolutely no need to cause more bombing because of a very overall flawed foreign policy.
How are you going to vote on impeachment?
I'll vote for impeachment.
For all 4 articles?
Yes, unenthusiastically, because I think the charges are way too mild and not touching the issues that I would like to touch. I mean, that's what we should be addressing. But I wish the Congress would address the unconstitutionality of presidents waging war. That, to me, is a lot more serious than Monica Lewinsky, let me tell you. It has nothing to do with national security. Matter of fact, our national security is more jeopardized by permitting this to happen because we're liable to start a war. We're liable to have our military men killed. We're liable to have more attacks on us by terrorists.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know, is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
وماذا عن قتل المدنيين الأبرياء؟ قتل المدنيين الأبرياء كما تزعم أمريكا ويزعم بعض المثقفين كلام عجيب جدا. يعني من الذي قال أن أبناءنا والمدنيين عندنا غير أبرياء ودمهم مباح ولو بدرجة ما؟ وإذا قتلنا المدنيين عندهم صاحت الدنيا علينا من مشرقها إلى مغربها وألبت أمريكا حلفائها وعملائها وصبيان عملائها. من الذي قال إن دماءنا ليست دماء ودماؤهم دماء؟ من الذي أفتى بهذا؟ من الذي يقتل في بلادنا منذ عشرات السنين؟ أكثر من مليون طفل ماتوا في العراق وما زالوا يموتون. فلما لا نسمع صارخ ولا مستنكر ولا من يواسي ولا من يعز.
And now a few items from our Freedom Files. It's the story that no one else is reporting, but you can always count on your night watchman to bring you the stories others are afraid to cover. Earlier this week, the President signed the National Defense Authorization Act. If you've been watching our program, then you know that this new law authorizes the President to arrest anyone, anywhere, including on American soil, and hold the person indefinitely, including American citizens. President Obama once threatened to veto this bill, but not for the reasons you might think. The President's lawyers argued he already had this power. He also issued a so-called signing statement on this law, a practice he condemned when he was a candidate, claiming that the executive branch has broad authority to determine how it would like to implement the law. President Obama already kills Americans with drones. Now he has the power to round up Americans and ship them off to Cuba, never to be heard or seen from again. Happy New Year, America. Does the Fourth Amendment still exist? Police in the state of Florida routinely use a practice that sends canine teams out to sniff at the doors of homes without search warrants. If the dog scratches in front of the door, the police claim that that means the dog smells drugs inside. And then the police go to a judge and get a search warrant based on the dog's scratching. This is, of course, absurd. An unauthorized search has already taken place when the police dog sniffed for the drugs at the front door. Florida Supreme Court has rightly rebuked this practice, ruling that it violates the Fourth Amendment, which prohibits unwarranted searches and seizures. The U.S. Supreme Court may bizarrely disagree. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that police can enter your home just because what they thought they smelled. The Supreme Court will now decide whether to take up the Florida case, and Freedom Watch will keep you updated. This is a real horror story. 37-year-old Tina Funderburk of Brooklyn, New York, has spent much of the last 8 years in a Hinds County jail in Mississippi. She was charged with the death of her 3-year-old daughter, but is yet to be tried and may never be tried. What happened? Ms. Funderburk is diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic and has been repeatedly declared mentally incompetent to stand trial. She's stuck in jail until doctors can agree and a judge declares that she's either legally insane or legally fit to stand trial. The Hinds County District Attorney Robert Smith defends this abomination by claiming he has an ethical duty, an ethical obligation to make sure that we're prosecuting someone who is competent to stand trial. What about the constitutional guarantee of a speedy trial? After nearly a decade behind bars, it makes us wonder if the authorities have already decided it's her fate to spend another decade behind bars rather than get a real jury trial. Maybe they don't have enough evidence to convict her. Does the government work for us or do we work for the government? Is the best government really the one that governs the least? Can we ever have a government that stays within the confines of the Constitution? If the Constitution was written to keep the government off the people's backs, why is the government all over us? Tonight, whatever happened to freedom? Understanding where we go from here should start with understanding how we got here. We are the free and independent people of the United States of America. We are free because those who preceded us fought a war against a person who was then the world's grandest king and who presided over what was then the world's grandest empire. The Founding Fathers risked, as they like to tell us, their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honors for the freedom and independence they won and we have inherited. But they were not saints. And initially, their cause was not popular. From the records available today, the people who measure historical trends have concluded that in 1776, only about 1/3 of Americans supported the revolution, about 1/3 of Americans opposed it, and about 1/3 of them didn't care. When I first looked at these numbers, I thought, in 1776, this was the grandest fight for the greatest amount of freedom for the most people at any point in history. So who could possibly oppose it? And who in their right mind could not care? Fast forward to today and ask, who could possibly support a government that regulates everything from the strength of the water pressure in your shower to the size of the toilet bowl in your home to the thickness of the leather in your shoes? Who could want a government that punishes people for speech, that lets its own agents write their own search warrants, that fights wars just to keep the military-industrial complex busy, that debases all you own by printing worthless money and putting it into the stream of commerce, that gives away more than half the tax dollars it collects, and that, despite express provisions in the Constitution to the contrary, permits the president to lock up whoever he wants and to throw away the key? Perhaps the colonists who didn't care if they freely chose their government or were cared for by a benevolent tyrant had an odd way of knowing what was coming. Perhaps those who opposed the revolution were afraid to take on the king, to challenge authority, and to risk their comfortable lives for the unknown. Well, we all know what happened. A relatively small part of the population pushed the culture and society toward freedom. And the freedoms that they chose were pure. I mean, after we won the revolution and wrote the Constitution, the new government and the political class assured all Americans that they could think as they wished and say what they thought and publish what they said, that they could associate or not associate with anyone. They could worship as they chose or choose not to worship. They could defend themselves with guns even against tyrants. That troops would never enter their homes, that only neutral judges would issue search warrants, and that the government could not take their lives, their freedom, or their property without a trial, at which their fault would be proven in front of a neutral jury. All this was guaranteed to the first generation of Americans and to their posterity, that would be us, because much of it had been denied them by the king and the parliament, and because Americans came to believe, even the one-third that were afraid and the one-third that didn't care, that these rights are ours by virtue of our humanity. Whether you believe that we are the highest order of natural selection, or whether you believe, as I do, that we were created by God in his image and likeness, you know in your heart that these natural yearnings, as St. Thomas Aquinas and Thomas Jefferson called them, are our natural rights, are a part of our humanity, and cannot long be denied us. And yet, they have been denied. The same founding fathers who wrote that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, in fact, enacted the Alien and Sedition Acts, which punished speech that was critical of them, critical of the government. This happened because people were afraid to challenge the tyranny of the majority. America, the greatest losses to our freedom have come not from someone attacking us, but from the government ignoring the Constitution and the majority letting them get away with it. The worst amendments to the Constitution were not those ratified by the states, but rather were amendments by consensus, where all three branches of government agreed to look the other way. When good people do nothing, bad things happen. So what shall we do? We should challenge authority, no matter who is in charge. We should challenge the majority whenever it curtails anybody's freedom. We should side with freedom, no matter what the government says. We should vote out of office those who push the government outside the Constitution, no matter what earmarks they just brought home. And we should make the government afraid of us. Afraid of us. Because as Jefferson reminded us, when the people fear the government, there is tyranny. But when the government fears the people, there is liberty. From New York, defending freedom, everybody's freedom whenever I can. So long, America.
Hi, folks. This is Ben Dover with a special offer just for you. Are you tired of your old world, not getting enough fluff and distraction, in debt up to your eyeballs, your air not fit to breathe, food not fit for human consumption? You want to leave, but there's just nowhere to go. Well, now there's a brand new world waiting for you. A world where you don't have to worry about annoying things like thinking, freedom, money, independence, or helping your neighbor. From the people who brought you lies, pain, and human suffering on a global scale, the Illuminati are at it again with their biggest agenda ever. New World Order now. What would you give up for a new world? Your house, your car, your freedom, your liberties, your soul? For only $8.5 trillion, you too can have the illusion of a new world. Luxurious accommodations at FEMA camp getaways, Georgia coffin condos, free train transportation, ludicrous security, insane workloads, and all Constitution free. Yes, that's right, all Constitution free. But wait, there's more. For just a little more apathy, we'll deliver twice as much tyranny, absolutely free. You just simply go on paying up the yin-yang for your shipping and your handling, complete with extreme supervision. Yes, supervision. It's super. We'll even throw in these beautiful matching bracelets absolutely free. Recommend this offer to your family and friends and get free RFID chips for everyone. Get your very own VeriChip radio frequency identification. It's fun and it's easy. Here's how to order your new world. Do absolutely nothing. That's right. You don't have to do a thing, and your new world will be here before you know it. This offer is limited to 2 delusions per sheeple, so don't act now.
No payment required. Thanks for ordering. Now go back to sleep. Your new world is on its way, like it or not. Side effects may include, but not limited to, tyranny, additional taxation, imprisonment, homelessness, submissiveness, poverty, depression, vomiting, and may cause occasional bleeding of the anus. Ask your doctor if the new world order is right for you.